Hi, I'm Roy from Drone School UK. This is my final summary video now in January 2026 of the CAA changes to the drone code. And this is the drone code going forward. It all started in May 2025 when they published CAP 3105, which was a consulted document which eventually became the drone code. I did a video in May about that document, and then I also did a video in September, October 2025, which was the result of all of the consultation and the final drone code. Now, since that date, there has been a few minor tweaks to the document, the actual drone code document that is now being published in January 2026. Now, the final document has caused a lot of debate on social media, on YouTube, because there are some ambiguities and it doesn't please everybody. Well, what I'm going to do in this summary is cut through all of this noise and give you the facts about where you can and can't fly. The first key point is the weight threshold. If the drone is over 100 grams and it has a camera, which most drones have, then you need a flyer ID and an operator ID. Now, the flyer ID is in effect linked to the drone code. It is the theory test for the drone code. And when you pass it, what you're actually doing is accepting the actual drone code and saying that you do understand the drone code and you've read it and you've passed a test about it. Therefore, if anything happens and you get it wrong, you can't plead ignorance as a defense. You can't turn around and say, oh, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't realize what I was doing, because you've read the drone code, you've passed the theory test with the flyer ID. That's what it's all about. From an age point of view, if the child is under 13, they can do a flyer ID, but they have to be with the parent when they're doing the ID. If they're 13 to 17, they can go on the website and do it themselves. It's just to do with the GDP. So any age really can get a flyer ID. But then after the flyer ID, if you buy a drone, you need to get an operator ID, which is a number. And that operator ID, you have to be over the age of 18 to get an operator ID. Finally, with regard to supervision, if the child is under the age of 13, then as you see in this diagram here, the parent needs to be with them when they're flying. But they're between 13 and 17. They can fly the drone unsupervised, but legally the parent is responsible for the drone and the flight. I hope that explains that point. The flyer ID is free to do and it's valid for 5 years. Now, with the operator ID, that is a paid item and it's currently £11.79. It goes up every year and it's an annual fee that you pay, but you only pay it once and then it covers. Doesn't matter how many drones you have. If you've got one drone or 15 drones, you only have one operator ID, one £11.79 payment, but it's only valid for 1 year. And the operator ID needs to be attached to the drone, either externally or in the battery compartment. It doesn't have to be visible, but it has to be on the physical drone. The next key change is drone class markings. Currently, there is a C0 to C6 marking on drones, and they're from the ESA regs. And we've adopted those, and we have a transition period now from January 2026 to January 2028 to transfer across to the UK 0 to UK 6 markings. So that's quite straightforward. However, the wording has been changed since my last video slightly to relate to the actual drones themselves. The key change is a few small words, but they have a massive knock-on effect. And they are, it says at the top, while legacy drone or model aircraft models can continue to be sold, any new model placed on the market, which is the key word, from January 2026 must have a UK class marking. Now, that's a change from September, October wording. And what this actually means now is that if you buy a Mini 5 Pro, DJI Mini 5 Pro, which is a current drone, or a Air 3S, a current drone, it's actually termed a legacy drone because it's not a new model. Now, if they bought out the Mini 6 Pro in, say, May next year, which they're not going to do, but if they did that, that would be a new model and it would have to have the UK 1 label on it, or the UK 0 label for in that particular case. No UK labels will be put on existing DJI drones in the UK, for example, like the Mini 5 Pro. So if you go out and buy a new Mini 5 Pro today, it'll have a C0 rating on it. Whereas in October, it was insinuated that any new drones, even the new Mini 5 Pro, if it was brand new, physically new, rather than a new model, would have to have the UK 0 rating or a UK label. That is not the case anymore. And that's quite a major change. The next question relates to this transition period. I've been out and I've bought my DJI Air 3S next month, February 2026. I keep that drone until January the 1st, 2028. Now that transition period has now come to an end, and that drone will no longer be able to fly in the A1 category under the current regulations and legislation, which is a bit of a misnomer. Now, we were expecting DJI to issue us with a UK 1 or allow us to get a UK 1 sticker for that drone sometime in the next 22 months. But we cannot guarantee that. So this is quite a big anomaly that will probably be cleared up in some way, shape or form, by the DJI allowing issue of a sticker or the CAA extending the deadline, but nobody knows. So this is an anomaly at the moment, and there is no solution to this at the moment. The next is the description of airspace has been renamed. A1 is flying over people. A2 is flying near people, minimum separation of 50 meters, and A3 is flying far from people, minimum separation of 150 meters. And when you look at this A1 and start to relate it to the C0 or UK 0 or C1 or UK 1 drone classifications, this starts to make sense. So the A1, you can fly the C0 and C1 drones up to 900 grams, and they can be flown over uninvolved people. Now, this is a major change. This A1 category was previously only related to C0 drones or drones under 250 grams. It's now possible to fly a C1 drone in this A1 category, and that's the Air 3S, for example, from January the 1st, 2026. And that Air 3S doesn't have to be in a slow speed mode. It can be in normal mode or it can be in sports mode. Let's look at the A2 now. And you need an A2 certificate of competency to fly in the A2 category. And we do this, and it's £99, and it's an online course. Now on the A2, there's the minimum horizontal distance, and it's not a bubble, is 50 meters from uninvolved people. And the minimum distance from occupied buildings is 50 meters. The reason it's 50 meters from occupied buildings, you have to understand that people can come out of those buildings and then they're an uninvolved person, and you have to stay 50 meters away from them anyway. Now, if the building is empty and you know it's empty, you can fly next to that building or over that building with no issues. Taking that A2 a little bit further, one of them's been removed. That was the 250 to 500 gram rule. That's gone as of January the 1st, 2026. However, it allows closer flights to uninvolved people for C2 drones. For example, the DJI Mavic 4 Pro, for example. And that's down to 30 meters rather than 50 meters. And if you're in a slow speed mode, it's down to 5 meters from uninvolved people, which is a major difference. But you need to have the A2 certificate of competency to be able to do that with a C2 drone. Now, in the A3 category, you've got to stay 150 metres from residential, commercial, industrial and recreational areas. It doesn't matter whether they're occupied or unoccupied. And you need to stay a minimum from 50 metres from a single building and 50 metres minimum from uninvolved people. Finally, to bring the A1, A2 and A3 categories together, here's a simple table designed by Mike Green at Commercial Drone Train. I've got him to thank for this, which I find the best way to look at and work out what drone you can fly and where you can fly it in these three categories. So take a look at the table, and it's got across the top the UAS Legacy, the C-Class, the UK markings and what registration you need and the operating areas you can use the drone in. This key change relates to night flying. The regulations in October were saying that you needed a strobe light. These have been altered slightly now to say, the CAA say that you need a flashing green light on the drone at all times so that you can see it from the ground. Now, DJI have lights already built into most of their drones. For example, let's take the DJI Mini 5 Pro. It has a green flashing lights on the back of the drone, which you can see. Now, one of the issues with the DJI Mini 5 Pro is when you film, i.e. set the video going, those green lights go out for the period of time that you're recording. When you're taking a still image, they do the same. Whereas on the bigger drones like the DJI Mavic 4, you can switch those lights on or off. So when you're videoing, those lights can still be flashing. It depends on what you want to do. It's not a good idea having flashing lights working when you're videoing because it puts a tinge on the actual video, but that's what it's about. So looking at the debate that's going on about this whole thing, which is lengthy now, you can fly the DJI Mini 5 Pro with the flashing lights. You don't have to have the extra strobe on the top of the drone, but it will switch itself off if you video. So it's a catch-22. DJI can upgrade the software so that will work, and you can switch it on and off when you're videoing as a toggle switch, but that is not here at the moment. So if you have a Mini 5 Pro and you want to record at night, the lights will go off and you will be not complying with the regulations. I hope that makes sense. One obvious problem area is the DJI Neo 2, the latest drone that they've just launched. And at 151 grams, it doesn't come with any form of light. And this will need a flashing light attached to it in the future if you want to fly this at night. There is no way around it, unfortunately. And finally, the biggest change is remote ID. And this is truly the elephant in the room. What they're saying is that all drones over 100 grams with a camera will need some form of remote ID, some form of transmission from the drone. Now, all new drones that have been sold this year, i.e. from January the 1st, 2026 onwards, with a UK label, you will need to have remote ID already working on that drone. But earlier we've learned that all new drones sold in the UK, physical new drones, not new model drones like the Mini 5 Pro, for example, won't need remote ID until January the 1st, 2028. So let's give you a couple of examples. I bought my Mini 5 Pro in September last year, September 2025. That has got a C0 label on it and will not need any form of remote ID until January the 1st, 2028. Now, if I go out and buy a new Mini 5 Pro or a Neo 2 or whatever I buy this year, February 2026, March 2026, whatever, it's going to come, because it's a legacy model, it's not a new model as we've just talked earlier, then it's going to come with the C0 label depending on what it is. And that will not require any form of remote ID until the 1st of January 2028. Now, on the DJI drones, most DJI drones, the remote ID is already built into the firmware and software, so it will be a software upgrade. Some of the older drones like the Mavic 2 or the Air 2 will not have it. But if it's running on the DJI Fly app, then most drones on the DJI Fly app will have a firmware or a software upgrade. So older DJI drones will need some form of remote ID transmitter external to the drone rather than the software upgrade. And other drones will have to have some form of transmitting remote ID attached to it, normally adding between 12 and 14 grams to the weight of the drone. Now that could push the drone over the 250 key drone weight. Looking at the remote ID, as I said earlier, you can have one attached to the drone or it can be a software upgrade. Now, the CAA want a hybrid network. That's a combination of a direct remote ID and a network ID. But the system is expensive and no funding has been achieved or been promised so far. So that won't come in very quickly. Now, it'll be the direct remote ID that's used at first. So looking at that, you'll see the drone will transmit an unencrypted data like the drone unique number, location of the controller, telemetry like the speed, the height of the drone, the direction of travel, the distance from the controller, the location of the controller, and that's transmitted locally around your drone and can possibly be read by phone apps like Open Drone ID that you see on the screen here. But on average, the broadcast distances will vary probably up to about 5 kilometers. And the network type of ID would collect all that drone data, and that could be harvested and be accessed via an API to a third party. But that's a way off. Now, remote ID was implemented in the US in April 2024, but it's for drones over 250 grams. And you can look on the USA FAA website for DJI drones that have their direct remote ID approved. This is normally a software upgrade. Your registration page on the CAA website is already set up for remote ID. If you press the view button on there, it comes up with your remote ID and gives you a remote ID number with a 3-digit private key. You then go to the DJI Fly app in the Safety tab and hit Remote Identification. This then brings up a section where you can put your number in from your remote ID on the CAA website. And finally, let's look at the areas that are hardly any change or no change. The first one is that the maximum altitude you can fly in the UK is 120 meters. What DJI have done very recently, though, is they've hardwired that so that you physically can't pull it above 120 meters in some of the software upgrades that are appearing on the latest drones in the DJI Fly app. For example, my Mini 5 Pro, I can't push that altitude above 120 meters now. It's capped at that level. The next one is maximum distance you can fly away from yourself used to be 500 meters, but that's been taken away discreetly out of the drone code, and it was never covered under the open category. But if you did have an operational authorization with a GVC, for example, they still state that it is 500 meters is your maximum distance you can fly the drone away from you. So it's a notional figure now. It's not in the regulations, but visual line of sight is the key measurement now. You can't fly this drone out of visual line of sight. You need to be able to orientate the drone which way it's facing without any reference to the screen or the instruments. You can use the lights, and if you're looking at something like a drone which is a mini drone under 250 grams, the testing that we've done is your maximum distance for visual line of sight to orientate the drone is about 100 meters, or it's under 100 meters. You can't fly over in a flight restricted zone unless you've got permission, and you can't fly over a crowd. And a crowd is not a specific number, it's a gathering, it's how close people are together. So if they're in a confined space and they've got less than 2 or 3 or 4 meters around them, so they can't move out the way if something falls out of the sky, then it's a crowd. So if you get 20 people in a small confined space, they can be deemed a crowd. Whereas if you get 2,000 people spread out with lots of space in between them, they are not a crowd. But a normal crowd is somewhere like football stadiums, all the obvious places, events, anywhere that a crowd would gather, it is called a crowd. And flying using FPV first person view, you need a spotter. You can't see the drone with goggles on, and that's a key thing. And if you're in follow me mode, you can have the drone up to 50 meters behind you. You don't have to be able to see the drone or view the drone. You can be walking forward with the drone behind you, and you can have it 50 meters away in follow me mode. So hope that helps. Happy flying. Bye for now. If you enjoyed this video, then subscribe to the channel or watch the next video in the playlist or the new videos that we've just recently downloaded.